We're not ready to start yet, but I have been asked by someone who has much more authority and hair than myself, if we could maybe, and I hate to say this, scoot a little bit into the middle, because apparently there's others that need not middle seats. So we'll get started in a minute, but there you go. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you. On behalf of the President's Convocation Committee and the A.P.E.X team, I'd like to welcome you all here to the Power of Place. I'd like to extend a special welcome to the friends and family of those who have traveled and braved the university parking structure to be here for the people we're going to highlight. Could you please stand, friends and family, that we can recognize you? There you go. There you go. Friends, family. Thank you. Thank you. It's fitting that we'll be showcasing the power of place in this inspiring location. Many of us have been in this room and may have often wondered about the stories of those who've been honored in this great hall. Today, we'd like to share 5 of them. Some of them may be familiar to you, others not so much. However, each of them has contributed to the power of this place, this community, this university. William Wallace Flanigan valued the beauty of this place and in its potential to inspire and transform our learning community. Fred C. Adams believed that this place and the theater that was created here deserved to be shared with the world. Annie Spencer valued equity and inclusion by shaping a place for all students to have opportunity. Roy L. Halversen fostered excellence so that others may recognize and know the importance of this place. Bessie Dover valued our student-centered place through her dedication to student activities, to international students, and as a career counselor. Each of these individuals have helped shape our learning community into the institution it is today, and in turn, this place shaped them. The words you will hear came from current and former students, faculty, past and present, and the individuals themselves. The photos you will see have been curated from family members and from the archives at special collections in the Gerald R. Sherritt Library, and much gratitude to Paula Mitchell and Sally McDonald for helping that happen. Special thanks go to Ann Levitt for institutionally important work, Southern Utah University, The First 100 Years, A Heritage History. We would be remiss, however, if we did not acknowledge the power of this place to the people who came before the framers and founders of this institution. We recognize that these lands have deeply rooted spiritual, cultural, and historical significance to the Southern Paiutes. We begin with them.
Maikwas, Nunanien, Ashnawayo, Nunapien, Rebecca Hill. Hello everyone, my name is Ashton Awayo, my mother is Rebecca Hill, and I want to welcome you all here today. Today I'm going to play one Native American flute song for you, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Bridget Eastep. I'm the Executive Director of Outdoor Pathways and Assistant Professor in Outdoor Recreation. And I'd like to start out today by going a little off script and taking you on a walk in our minds, so we don't have to go outside, through campus with William Wallace Flanigan. In this, go out these doors. You need to close your eyes, that's fine, and walk to your favorite place on campus, in the outdoors. Look around. Notice the trees, the sky. Feel the breeze. And once you've got that feeling, we can begin. William Wallace Flanigan valued the beauty of this place and in its potential to inspire and transform our learning community. In 1904, William Flanigan first visited Cedar City. During his visit, he walked out to the Branch Normal School campus, then quite far out into the fields, curious to see what was of interest. As he walked out about the grounds, he thought of the possibilities for beautification. Over the next few years, as he continued to visit Cedar City and the college campus, he became more and more convinced of the power the campus landscape could possess if given the proper attention. Branch Normal School principal George Decker was eager to improve the appearance of the grounds surrounding the campus buildings. He disapproved of the cattle that habitually grazed here. He had already been instrumental in planting some evergreen trees along the walking paths, but had ideas for more sweeping refinements. He had offered others a temporary position as a groundskeeper, but no one accepted. Then he met William Flanigan. Hearing of the possible employment, Flanigan once again visited Cedar City and was directed to Principal Decker's house. In Flanigan's words, "I contacted Mr. Decker and was told to bring my bed and come up to the house, that I would be considered one of the family. Immediately, I liked his attitude, his frank and open kindliness. He took me on the job for 1 month, and I knew I was on probation. I went to work janitoring, tending furnace, and doing all the odd jobs in and around the two buildings. Including the bare hill, there was 22.5 acres that comprised the campus. There were only 19 evergreen trees on the path between the buildings and the hitching post." What in the world did they need a hitching post for? For George Decker's saddle horse, he treated his position with dignity and rode to school in style. On the north end of the school property, so you can think about just outside these doors, was an ugly wash, overgrown with willows. Little by little, Will Flanigan cleared the numberless rocks from that land on the hill, borrowing wagons and teams from the men in town. He hauled the rocks he gathered and dumped them into the wash, which gradually filled. Around the massive ones, he planned spots of interest. By 1913, William had been hired full-time, and the work on campus beautification began in earnest. The first obstacle was convincing the new principal, Roy F. Honer, to let him actually tend the grounds. He wanted to transplant trees and plant grass on campus. After much annoyance, he finally wore Homer down and convinced him to let him go and get the trees that he wanted. Homer is quoted to have said, "Well, if you think you can make them grow, go and get them." And William did. At this time, there was a total of 19 trees on campus. In anticipation of the transplant of the trees, William went to work preparing the land. He experimented with what kinds of grasses would grow, as well as using his own wages to buy blasting powder to break apart the hard, rocky surface so that he could add a topsoil for grass to grow on and allow room for the roots of the trees. He also put in an irrigation system that, in his own words, reached every foot of the grounds. Once the campus grounds were ready, he headed off to retrieve the trees himself. The trees in question came from the mountains and hills surrounding Cedar City. The sources were split between various private and public lands. He made sure to get the trees that were adapted to the local climate so they would grow and flourish. A few hundred trees were initially transported by wagon and planted on the campus. Eventually, some 2,000 trees were transplanted here. Flanigan said, "I planted trees and shrubs, not from the expensive nurseries, but from our mountains and hills. When water was scarce, I sometimes stayed on the job 18 and 20 hours a day. Oh, I hated a burned spot in the grass." Out of the 3,000 to 4,000 trees he planted and watered from 1910 to 1945, his crowning achievement he'd often repeat was, and never lost a single tree. He made a personal list of trees he had fostered and where they were planted. This list includes around 50 species and 287 types of trees. For the past 6 years, SUU has carried the Tree Campus USA designation. Only 7% of campuses nationwide can claim this. SUU is also internationally known as the University of the Parks. Both these titles are due in no small part to the literal groundbreaking work of William Flanigan. In 1943, after 33 years of work, William retired due to illness. However, his retirement did not last long. Near the end of World War II, he wrote to the school requesting employment. He couldn't work as he once did, but could have some benefit to the school in a supervisory position over the grounds. He needed 2 more years of work to qualify for state retirement. On behalf of Flanigan, multiple past and current faculty members wrote to the then president of the school to implore his rehire so that he could gain the benefits that he deserved for all his years of work on a small salary. William was rehired in 1945 and retired completely in 1947. The Flanigan era lasted over 30 years, during which this artist created a beautiful campus from the rocky hillside. Subsequent administrators supported and promoted beautification efforts as the community grew, and the campus became the jewel set in the center of the thriving town. William Wallace Flanigan valued the beauty of this place and its potential to inspire and transform our learning community. And now that you know that, you can walk with him as you go through campus.
Good morning. My name is Derek Charles Livingston, and I am the interim artistic director of the Utah Shakespeare Festival. For those of you who know Fred Adams, or knew Fred Adams, you'll understand why my jacket is so sparkly. Fred C. Adams believed that this place and the theater that was created here deserved to be shared with the world. In the spring of 1960, Fred Adams, a young and then the only drama professor at the College of Southern Utah, sat with his fiancée, Barbara Gaddy, in the fluffy bundle laundromat and on a yellow notepad designed their dream. The notes on that pad would become the blueprint for the Utah Shakespeare Festival. Fred joined the faculty of the College of Southern Utah in 1959 and continued to build a very successful drama program that the Cedar City community enthusiastically supported, especially after the construction of a brand new performance hall in 1955, now known as the Auditorium. Coming from a family that actively encouraged his dramatic ambitions, Fred sought and brought some of the biggest shows of the New York theater scene to rural southern Utah and to its small college. The only looming difficulty became the cost of continually paying a royalty right for new shows. The solution: produce Shakespeare, which was a risk, as the works of the Bard had only been produced 4 times in the history of the school. However, the plays of William Shakespeare existed in the public domain. No royalties needed. Then the problem became that most of the Bard's plays required large casts, mostly male. To solve this problem, Fred turned to one of the college's coaches for help. Fred, Coach, I've got to get some men. If I'm going to do a Shakespeare play, can any of your guys help me out? Coach, well, guys, I don't know if he really talked this way. I'm just making it up. Guys, Freddie wants to do a Shakespeare play. How many of you would volunteer to be in it for him? 8 hands shot up. And the play, which Fred had already decided on, The Taming of the Shrew, began pre-production. It proved a successful risk. The audience reacted with nightly standing ovations, and for the first time in the history of the college's drama program, extra performances were added. The community loved Shakespeare, and so did the actors. The next year, Romeo and Juliet garnered equal praise. In the summer of 1959, Fred had spent a few weeks living with friends in Ashland, Oregon. There, he developed a lifelong friendship with Angus Baumer, the founder of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. Fred spent all his time taking notes, watching rehearsals, and sketching sets in the hopes of strengthening his craft and to enhancing his own drama program. While in Ashland, he began to notice the similarities between Ashland and Cedar City. Both were similar in size, had small junior colleges, and were surrounded by scenic wonder. A question began to form in Fred's mind. If a Shakespeare festival could work in Ashland, Oregon, why not in Cedar City, Utah? The Shakespeare successes in the early 1960s allowed the college's drama department not only to begin earning a little income, which arts organizations are always really happy about, but develop a stable of young actors. In 1960, Fred took his college acting company on a barnstorming tour of rural Utah and Nevada. They performed Noel Coward's Blithe Spirit in cultural halls and rented auditoriums to great acclaim. The cast became the foundation for the first productions of what would become known as the Utah Shakespeare Festival. The pieces began to fall together. Fred and Barbara wanted to stay in Cedar City. Shakespeare worked in the community. The drama program had expanded, and the students were enthusiastic. However, there were some storm clouds on the horizon. Cedar City had begun to suffer some economic troubles. The iron mines, which had brought large amounts of tax revenue into the city and county coffers, were beginning to close, causing serious economic trouble for local businesses. Fred and Barbara envisioned a Shakespeare festival that would draw tourists into the community. Tourists that would stay in motels, eat at restaurants, buy gas for their cars, and shop in the local stores. Additionally, a festival could serve as an important recruiting tool for the college, bringing in students and their families, allowing them to fall in love with this place that Fred and Barbara had decided to call home. A Shakespeare festival could help Cedar City and the school not only survive, but thrive. Much like William Shakespeare, Fred surrounded himself with talented people who assisted in bringing his dream to life. His pioneering spirit inspired those around him to believe in the dream of the festival and the power of this place. One night, years before, as a young missionary in Finland for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Fred slogged through the frozen tundra. Cold and tired, he hung his head low, staring at the bleak, frozen ground. By chance, he glanced up and was overwhelmed by the northern lights. This experience forever changed him. He spent his life trying to get others to look up. He often said, when things are tough and you're discouraged, don't look down, trotting in the snow, but look up. It makes all the difference. Since the beginning, the festival grounded itself in the Cedar City community and in this place, striving to create a legacy of entertainment, education, and enriching experiences. For the festival and for Fred and Barbara, Cedar City became the hub, while, like spokes of a wheel, the festival's touring performances, teacher trainings, workshops, educational programs, and now virtual seminars have circled the globe. Fred C. Adams believed that this place and the theater that was created here deserve to be shared by the world. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alexa Lord. I'm on the women's basketball team here at Southern Utah, and I'm truly honored to be able to speak about Annie today. I'm so grateful for all that she did to lay the foundation for this university and for women's basketball. Annie Spencer valued equity and inclusion by shaping a place for all students to have opportunity. Annie Spencer arrived in Cedar City in the fall of 1897. She was young, just 23 years old. She was one of the 4 faculty members of the new branch normal school in Cedar City and the only female. Born in Michigan in May of 1874, Annie's parents worked hard to make their meager earnings stretch to provide educational advantages for their children. Annie was able to study music and elocution. The family purchased a small organ upon which Annie gained some skill. She earned a small salary by playing for the nearby Presbyterian church. In 1891, the Spencers sold all their belongings except the organ and sewing machine and moved to Salt Lake City. In Utah, Annie's family struggled. To help, Annie taught piano for 25 cents a lesson. The second summer in Utah, she took a course in physical education, which had just been introduced in the state by Maud May Babcock. Miss Babcock was also a newcomer to Utah. She believed in educating the whole individual, stressing the importance of physical, mental, and spiritual health. She taught at the University of Utah, where she founded 2 departments, the Department of Speech and the Department of Physical Education. It was from Miss Babcock that Annie learned to love and play basketball. After this summer, Annie knew she wanted to teach physical education and elocution. Annie applied to teach physical education and reading at the new school being formed in southern Utah. She then went east for a summer to study at Harvard University. Upon her return, she was delighted to find that she had been hired as a founding faculty member. As the school year began, Annie was asked to increase her class offerings from elocution and physical education to now include art and music. She would later write, "I had no idea of teaching art or music when I applied for the position in 1896. My specialty was reading and physical education. I was asked to teach full-time and in addition instruct in drawing and music. Fortunately, I had done considerable work in both." By the time she left BNS, she had taught music, art, elocution, and dramatics, as well as typewriting and women's basketball. Although they numbered only 4 in 1897, the faculty of the BNS was noteworthy. Those 4 teachers taught 118 students. Of the first faculty, Miss Annie Spencer was especially noted for her versatility, refinement, and high expectations of her students. Each year, each faculty member was responsible to present 2 lectures for the public. Miss Spencer always structured her presentations as recitals, which were enthusiastically hailed by the townspeople. Her attendance at Chautauqua each summer assured that whatever was going on in the eastern schools was quickly included in the curriculum at Branch Normal School. The domain of Miss Spencer, as her students referred to her, would have been almost exclusively the top floor, the only building on campus, Old Main, since she taught music and art as well as elocution and physical culture. This assembly room was well used by all the teachers as chapel was held each morning before classes began, each faculty member preparing these devotional programs for a week at a time by rotating turns. Operettas, plays, musicals, assemblies, and productions of all kinds were presented there until the second building, known as the Braithwaite, provided an auditorium. The assembly room was also fitted up and used as a gymnasium. Each school day began with spiritual preparation. Annie was not only a champion of the tradition of the morning devotional, she provided the accompaniment on the pump organ for robust congregational singing of such favorites as Sweet Hour of Prayer and I Need Thee Every Hour. In 1901, Erastus J. Milne, known as EJ, was hired to help Annie with her classes in bookkeeping, typewriting, and in physical education. One of his specific duties became the coaching of the women's basketball team. While Annie had successfully introduced women's basketball into the school's culture, operated women's leagues, and in fact would teach EJ some of the finer points of the game, it was not yet seen as acceptable for women to serve as coaches. Their association ripened over the next 4 years to friendship, courtship, and finally marriage. Each summer between 1901 and 1905, the 2 attended classes at Lake Chautauqua, New York, acting as chaperones for students who attended summer classes there. In 1905, Milne was invited to join the Chautauqua faculty. Annie resigned from her position at the Branch Normal School and joined her husband. She later recalled her departure. So in June 1905, I said farewell to my teaching career and my friends of Cedar City as our wedding day was to be June 14th. After our graduating exercises were over on June 12th, we journeyed over rough, rocky Black Ridge to St. George, where we were married. Returning to Cedar City the 16th, a drove of cattle of 1,700 head had preceded us, making it a slow, dusty, and bumpy ride. We stayed at Cedar City a day or two, then to Lund. We were happy, but broke. I had left my position that paid $90 a month and married a man who had every faith in, but who had a job that paid only $70 a month. Annie and EJ would eventually settle in northern Utah, where she became active in her community and her faith. She wrote of her time here: "My years of teaching and mingling with the young people and my association with the stalwart pioneers of Cedar City and surrounding towns were the richest and happiest of my life." Annie Spencer valued equity and inclusion by shaping a place for all students to have opportunity. Thank you.
Hi, I'm McKay Pullman, and I currently serve as the student body president this year. That was my boss. She's paid to do that. I'm very honored to share the story of Roy Halversen today. Roy L. Halversen fostered excellence so that others may recognize and know the importance of this place. In 1927, Roy joined the faculty of the Branch Agricultural College in Cedar City. He taught band, orchestra, theory, and English. In 1929, Roy married Maud McFarland and went to Germany for a year to study at the University of Berlin. Roy returned to Cedar City in 1930, and he wasted no time becoming involved in the community as well as the school. He created a string quartet that performed for the community and was well received by the citizens of Cedar City. After having experienced such decidedly different worlds over the course of his far-flung training, which would include another year of study at Juilliard in 1937, Halversen chose quite remarkably to settle permanently in Cedar City. From 1930 on, he was one of the guiding forces of the college music department and of the town's cultural life. A string player himself, it was inevitable that his most important contributions would be as an orchestral conductor and a chamber musician. Former student Floyd Rigby said that when Roy Halversen took a violin into his hands, removed a hanky from his pocket, and placed it gently under his chin, and took a moment to cradle that violin, there was a certain expression that came over his face before he began to play, as though all of the music was going through his mind and each note was a personal friend. In 1935, the state of Utah found itself in immense financial stress. In that year's legislative session, significantly cutting funds to or completely discontinuing the BAC was considered. During the legislative visit to determine the fate of the campus, the officials were invited to attend a performance of The Messiah. This production, put on by Halversen and his colleague, William H. Manning, held in the Cedar City Tabernacle, saved the school. The legislators, who were very familiar with this piece, deliberately chose seats next to the door so they would have the option to leave early. However, they became enthralled with the performance. Not only did they stay until the end, upon returning to Salt Lake City, they enthusiastically threw their support behind the financial security of the college. From 1937 to 1951, Professor Halversen served as the secretary for the Music Arts Committee. This group was tasked with finding musical artists to come to campus and perform for the students, including singers, piano and string quartets, opera companies, and other musical groups. World War II disrupted the college by taking away many of the male students for military service. However, it also brought a unit of the Air Force to campus. Halversen was appointed director of academics for these men and oversaw the instruction of 300 Air Corps cadets in the fields of mathematics, physics, history, geography, English, medical aid, and civil aeronautics regulations. During the war, Halversen was determined to keep the traditions of music alive in the community. He continued the annual performance of The Messiah, and his expertise in orchestra, music, and his ability to involve the community literally preserved the music traditions of Cedar City during this time. After the war, Roy Halversen continued to teach at the school. and became a much-loved professor and stalwart community member. He often played at the funerals of his friends and neighbors, gathered groups of youth to play musical programs in local church congregations, served in leadership of many civic clubs and organizations, and over the course of 4 decades, Halversen organized, directed, and participated in countless orchestras, string quartets, and other ensembles. Perhaps more importantly, he shared his ability unstintingly and often without compensation with the local schools, teaching and inspiring literally hundreds of students. The tradition of an annual performance of The Messiah, fostered by Roy Halversen, continues to this day. In 2005, the music department established the Halversen String Quartet to keep his legacy alive. The orchestra of Southern Utah that Halversen's beliefs are the foundation of the orchestra's beliefs as it strives to support the youth in their musical endeavors and goals. OSU holds an annual R.L. Halversen concert in his honor that continues to this day. Roy Halversen died on March 16, 1971, after a battle with cancer. Speaking at his funeral, SUSC President Royden C. Braithwaite aptly observed that Halversen's life work had really been more of a ministry. In a sense, then, whether he was in Utah, Berlin, or New York, Roy Halversen really inhabited a single world, that of music. As his friend Maurice Abravanel, the renowned conductor of the Utah Symphony, observed, he dedicated his life to the highest calling, that of a teacher, and he taught the most humane of all the arts, which is music. He proved by his own example that a great man can be fully productive even in a comparatively small community, and he shared his love of music with a whole generation of students who were fortunate to learn from him. The years have been long, Halversen wrote shortly before his death. The years not easy to maintain, and much pioneering has had to be done. Certainly, a fight has been made not to compromise the standard of music, to do all that could be done with available material. Roy L. Halversen fostered excellence so that others may recognize and know the importance of this place.
Hi, I'm Paige Raw. I serve as the SUUSA International Representative, and I will be sharing the lovely story of Bessie Dover. Bessie Dover valued our student-centered place through her dedication to student activities, to international student, and as a career counselor. Bessie Dover and her husband, Kent Red Dover, whom she had married after he returned from service in World War II, arrived in Cedar City in July of 1945. They rented a basement apartment of a local family, and Bessie found work as a secretary for Professor Ben Cooley in the Industrial Arts Department at the College of Southern Utah. Bessie left the position less than 1 year later when she learned that she was pregnant with their first child. Bessie returned to the school in January of 1962 and assumed a variety of positions and roles that would become a remarkably long career. Bessie would work through 3 name changes: the College of Southern Utah State College, and finally, Southern Utah University. Bessie worked in roles such as a teacher, advisor, publications council member, career counselor, and secretary and information service assistant. In 1962, Bessie was hired to assist Fred Adams in promoting the Utah Shakespeare Festival. She started working there as a public relations specialist. Bessie wrote press releases and articles based on her interviews with people that were involved in the festival. She then had them printed in popular newspapers and magazines to get the festival the best exposure. She already had contacts with the Salt Lake Tribune and a ready-set outlet with the paper. She once mentioned that, and I quote, "I did have a little argument with the editor up there, because I said he wasn't giving us very good placement on the stories I was already sending him. But he said, I'm doing you the biggest favor you could ever imagine by putting all of your news on the obituary page." Well, she thought that really made sense to me. That's the best read page in the paper. Even after Bessie moved positions within SUSC, she remained working as a hostess at the festival and assisted in the mailing out of the seasonal brochures. In 1969, SUSC President Royden Braithwaite asked Bessie to assist in the advising of the international students. It was a position that Bessie would come to love. Bessie would be an advisor to over 50 international students. She loved to get the students involved in the local Utah culture, but also loved to learn about the countries they came from and their own individual cultures. She taught a class in international cuisine, held international dinner nights, and encouraged students to perform by singing and dancing at local clubs, church events, and school functions. Her husband Red said that Bessie taught and counseled students from all over the world. I never knew who I was coming home to after being out on the road for 4 or 5 days. They could be from Nigeria, Japan, or Iran. We've had many of these students in our home celebrating different occasions, and it was always interesting to ask them about their culture and learn about these young people. One of these students who benefited from Bessie's kindness was Cyrus Saifizadeh. He shared, "It was mid-July of 1979 when my twin and I arrived in the United States to attend college at SUSC. The early stage of our journey in the United States was very difficult due to being away from our parents, specifically our mother. I remember my brother and I walking on campus during a holiday, where, as I recall, we were the only ones there. We were feeling very down, sitting on the bench in front of the old library, not knowing whether it was the right decision to come to college in the US. As we were sitting and not even conversing with one another, we noticed a lady walking towards us with a beautiful smile on her face, and she said, are you the two brothers from Iran that are going to attend college?" Her kind approach was so welcoming that we felt at ease. I remember she patiently took time to take us on a campus tour and arranged a time to meet with her the day after to register for classes and get us ready for school. Since then, Bessie became a guardian and a mother, oceans away from our own mother. Her love and kindness was contagious. She never lost touch with us after college. As I returned to Cedar City with my wife and my children to open our business, side note, it's the Pastry Pub, Bessie was there every step of the way to encourage our path and saved every newspaper clipping of our accomplishments. That is something that every mother would do for their own children. Among all foreign students that I recall, she loved, cared, and supported them, as well as worried about them as a mother would do. Another former student likened her to Charlotte from the book The Charlotte's Web. Every year, she would scatter her children to the 4 corners of the world where they would prosper and continue the lessons taught. In 1974, Bessie became assistant coordinator of student activities. During her time in the Student Center, she still remained involved with the international students as well as the student publications. After a time, however, Bessie realized her work there wasn't making the impact in the lives of her students that she felt it should. She then decided to pursue higher education. After a couple of years, she graduated from the University of Utah with a master's in education psychology. She accepted a new role at SUSC as a career counselor. It was while serving in this position that she would recall a young Mindy Benson, who after her elementary school day would come to campus to visit her father. Before stopping in her dad's office, she would pay a visit to Bessie Dover, and these are Dover's words, "Would sit on my lap and play with my wooden cuckoo clock before going into her father's office, where she would cuddle up on his lap and take a nap." Bessie would remain in her position in student activities until her retirement in 1988. Bessie Peck Dover died on April 19, 2020. Bessie valued our student-centered place through her dedication to student activities, to the international students, and as a career counselor. Thank you.
In the spirit of Annie Spencer Milne, we will now engage in some robust congregational singing by singing President Benson's favorite song, Bat Out of Hell by Meatloaf. The lyrics are in the back of the program if you follow along with me. Once again, on behalf of the President's Convocation Committee, I'd like to thank all of you for attending today, and a very special thanks to my colleagues who have participated in telling the stories of a few of the many in this great hall. Now, as many of you know, Southern Utah University is located near the Cedar City Cemetery, and I spent many hours wandering through this amazing place of local history. However, at times, it can be a bit frustrating. The common practice of placing birth and death dates on headstones is great for the genealogist, but as a historian, I'm interested in the dash in the middle. After all, it is our story that gives meaning to our lives. In a sense, our birth and death are merely mechanical processes. To those of us separated by the years, knowing the stories behind these many portraits here in the Great Hall is what truly makes them human to us. To me, history is a collection of stories. As historians, we search these stories and look for patterns that provide meaning to our experience in an effort to understand who we are, where we came from, and how we can be our best selves. History is built on human experiments. History is made by humans. It acts as a guide, not a predictor. It fashions human character. Life is only a series of experiences, one occurring after another, but it's not the sum total that counts, but how we personally deal with them that ultimately makes the difference as to whether we are happy or not. There are some who would argue that it is important to study history so that we are doomed to repeat it, so we are not doomed to repeat it. I'm not one of those. The challenge with that idea is the assumption that history is a constant force in our lives that drives us to a specific conclusion. We want history to have a determining force because that absolves us from human responsibility. We are forced to face the fact that one person can make a difference, as evidenced by today. That we create good and bad, that sometimes good people do bad things and bad people do good things. We cannot impose intentionality on history. One of our challenges in telling the stories of our past is to second-guess those who were there. Recently deceased historian David McCullough reminds us, quote, "And just as we don't know how things are going to turn out for us, those who went before us didn't either. It's all too easy to find fault with people for why they didn't do that or they did do this because we are not involved in it. We are not there, inside it. We're not confronting what we don't know as those who preceded us were." End quote. I love that phrase, "we're not confronting what we don't know." To study history is to know the ending before you begin. It is vital that we not place our own knowledge into the heads of those who came before. Imagine seeing Romeo and Juliet for the first time without any foreknowledge of what may happen, without knowing the ending before the beginning. We would do well to remember that the past was someone's present, and hopefully those that come after us will afford us the same courtesy. Ultimately, history is about story, those things that motivate us, connect us, and bind us together as a wonderfully diverse and expanding society. The poet Robert Frost said this, "In 3 words, I can sum up everything I have learned about life. It goes on." While I appreciate his brevity and the truthfulness of his words, I prefer the advice my father once gave me. He wrote, quote, "I have learned that the past is important. We learn from it. It is where we store the blueprints for a better tomorrow, but it is not the place to live. Today's that place. We get out of the past by trusting our own skills and abilities and by building on its experiences." End quote. I believe it is important to note that while only 5 stories have been shared today, there are, as you can see, many more. And maybe even more importantly, there are many relevant, valuable, and life-changing stories detailing the lives and legacies of thousands of others who have been impacted by the power of this place that have not been recognized by a portrait on this wall. I ask you today to reflect on the power of this place, this university, in your life, and also the power of you in this place. What is your SUU story going to be? The power of your story is in us, and it is in this place. We will soon inaugurate our 17th president, and it will certainly be an historic event, as for the first time, you know what I'm going to say, but I'm not going to say it, in the history of this institution, a portrait of a parent and one of their children will hang in this great hall. It is my devout belief that humans make history, but an understanding of history, an understanding of our place in our world, makes humans. I conclude with the mantra that I leave my students at the end of every class. Be safe, fly well, please take care of yourself, and if you can, help take care of someone else. Thank you very much.